Have you ever stared over the shoulder of a maniac as they're plotting and planning to destroy? Have you ever watched someone chase and watch and hunt humans? Well, this movie's all about that. And maybe it's not such a pretty picture when people kind of idolize these guys. So this movie's got something to say. And it's about one of the most notorious killers of all time, Ted Bundy. Let's check it out. What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be doing a spoiler-free review and a smaller unboxing of The Black Mass that just came out this last week. Now, I'm a little late to the party, but I have been sick, and I am trying to deal with some things here recently, as well as make a lot of changes on the podcast and everything. So we're going to get back to square here soon, catching up to talk about this film, which I think is pretty unique and kind of interesting. Some of you might actually really enjoy this one. So I'm going to go over the review first, and then we'll tell you everything that's in the unboxing afterwards. So let's get into it. So The Black Mass is based on a real event that occurred over the 24-hour period of a murder spree in Florida by Ted Bundy. And this is a movie that is sort of following that killer through every step of the process. And I've heard actually quite perfectly as it was described in all of the court cases and documents. This is a movie that was directed, written, and even acted in by Devani Pinn, who has done some other shorts and done a lot of movies as an actress. She is now stepping up to the plate to do her first feature film, although she does have another one planned called The Boulevard here that's in the barrel. She had help on writing with this movie with Eric Pereira and Brandon Slagle, and this is one by Cleopatra Entertainment. They've released this one, and they've been putting out a lot of releases actually as of lately. This is one of those movies that is sort of like a biopic, but it's also kind of like just a story. It's directly associated to the actual murders that took place in real life. And this is sort of a movie that is doing something a little bit different than what you may have seen before. And I'll explain that to you as we go. First up, this is going to be a little triggering probably for some people, although I think Penn did a really good job of doing things tastefully in this film, because there is a moment at the end of the film where it gets really violent and sort of, triggering for a lot of people, but still has the power and the punch to kind of turn you off if you're not used to these kind of imagery. So fair warning. Now, the aesthetic in this movie is actually pretty great, and doing a biopic, I can't even imagine, is very difficult to do, because there's a certain aesthetic that you have to have. There's a certain type of dialogue. Everything's got to just kind of like pop off. And I think that they did a fairly decent job here. Some of the text and intro of the movie and everything looks fantastic. It's actually very well done. I was surprised. I was like, wow, this is almost like, is this like a mainstream movie that I've never seen? And no, it's definitely an indie film. It's just excelling at some of these things. Now, it doesn't excel at everything, but it does do some things different that you might not expect. And that one thing is putting the camera over the shoulder of this killer. It's not following the characters and, doing that sort of thing. It's him peering in windows, looking from his car. You're really kind of getting into the mind of the killer here. And it's not a bad try to do this kind of thing, especially for an indie that's trying to undercut a mainstream biopic in more than one way. And what I mean by that is that this is a movie that is sort of picking on the mainstream for enjoying serial killers and kind of glorifying them. She's trying to subvert people's ideals of a serial killer by showing you the gory business and how it's not as glamorous as maybe, say, the biopic that Netflix put out with Zac Efron. It was called Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. Seemed to be pretty glamorizing of Ted Bundy because of his charm that he was trying to used in the court cases. It became sort of a fun thing. People even liked him and were rallying for him outside of the courthouse. This was a really wild thing, and they wanted to kind of play with that, but I think using Zac Efron being a hunky dude or whatever basically had the opposite of being extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile. In fact, it spurred a lot of adoration for the character and Zac Efron. Netflix even coming out and saying, "Can you please stop thirsting over Ted Bundy?" Yeah, I'm not kidding. And there was even a lot of posts where everybody was saying it was like a cool meme, but they were showing pictures of Zac Efron as Ted Bundy saying, "Kill me, daddy." And people were pretty upset, let's just say. And obviously this affected the director here, Pin, and writer, of course. She wanted to do something that was going to be the anti-version of that film and kind of really show you what it's like to be in the mind of a killer. And yeah, there's some moments in this film that are embarrassing for this serial killer. There's moments in the film that are shockingly gross and trippy and weird. And, you know, he's not as cool as you think he is. Let's just put it that way. As far as my interest in it, like, I appreciate what she tried to do here, and I think that she did a really good job in many departments, but some of the departments, it just felt a little off. There were moments where he was in the car and kind of staring at the situation, and you'd think that he was just out in broad daylight, like 2 feet away from people, and nobody would have noticed him staring at them. It seemed kind of weird, but you know, this is what basically happened, so what am I to say? It just kind of broke my sort of suspension of disbelief, I guess. Now, the acting is not going to be your top-notch acting here. We're talking, you know, pretty average for the most part, although there was some standout performances in the film. I just don't know that they were all the best takes, to be honest. But from what I've heard, that this movie was done in under a week in filmmaking for a very small budget. So you have to give credit where credit's due here, because obviously that was pretty good job doing all of this in one picture. This is a very difficult film for me to review because, one, it's not done in a typical style of a movie per se, and it's not really something that is glorifying it either. So enjoyment is a weird kind of metric to have for a movie that doesn't want to make you feel too good about watching it. Now, this isn't the sickest, most depraved thing I've seen. I mean, for Christ's sake, I've seen plenty of other films, and I'm sure some of you edgelords out there will correct me and say that you've seen a lot worse. I'm just saying, it's not as bad as August Underground or things like that. This is definitely more in the mainstream but indie spectrum style, but it still has some shocking moments and things in it that might trigger some people. You also can't glorify the gore in this and necessarily, but there is kind of a trippy moment in the film that I thought was kind of an interesting use, because it kind of shows you just how crazy the killer is, and I kind of like that. You know, I thought that was like a nice touch because I like trippy shit like that, but it kind of felt a little obligatory in the middle of it, and it made me wonder, where was this film gonna go? I kind of debated whether or not I would say who is in this film, but I feel like telling you what this film is about is probably more enticing than letting you decide for yourself. You know, we've seen a lot of Ted Bundy films, we've seen a lot of Ted documentaries, we've seen a lot of stuff about Ted Bundy, and you know, this one is very different, but it doesn't have all the best moving pieces in it. She has done a good job here, and it should be given credit, but it is not one that I'm likely to rewatch very soon. Pretty decent movie for a film that's trying to compete with the big mainstream. But I would probably give this film about a 6, maybe about a 6.5, but I'll say about a 6 out of 10 here. Being different, doing something different. I like the motivation factor of this film, and I think it's interesting how the character plays this Ted Bundy character as well, because it's very flawed and very gross in some moments, and just kind of disturbing in other ways, in ways that aren't just necessarily gory. It's not a flattering film, in other words. But we know how the story ends, and this is one of the things I think that led up to his capture. So, but yeah, if you're interested in biopics about serial killers, this might be the one for you. If you're not really into that, maybe you might want to skip this one. But yeah, that's just my opinions. That's just my thoughts on the matter. You may be lower on the spectrum, you may be higher, you may see some of the uniqueness that I saw in this film. It is not a gore fest, so if you're trying to look for something like that, I wouldn't really go into it that way. It's just a film that is trying to show you the downside of a guy who goes around doing this crazy stuff to a bunch of college girls. Now we're gonna go over some of the extras in here. Now there really isn't a whole lot, and I'll show you a little bit of details on like the cover and what's inside and stuff like that. There wasn't a whole lot to go with this, but you know, I can read off what it was and kind of tell you a little bit about it. We get bonus features of a trailer, and we also get an image slideshow. Not a whole lot. I was kind of expecting a lot more. I wanted to at least hear her thoughts on the film and see what she thought of the film, but there was no commentary track on this either, so I had to kind of go out and like do my research, my due diligence to find out, because I was curious, you know, what was the motivating factor and everything of this. As far as the release goes, it looks good. It looks really sharp. The colors pop on this one like crazy. It's, you know, the 70s colors, so, you know, there's a myriad of colors on the screen at any given time. It's an unrated release, so, you know, there is no rating on it, but it's, like I said, it's not a gore film. If you're kind of on the fence, you know, maybe it's not for you. Might want to wait till streaming, but I personally enjoyed it enough that I'm glad to have a copy of it. If you'd like to pick up a copy, I will put all the links down below. This was sent out to me by MVD Entertainment and Cleopatra Entertainment, so thank you very much for sending this out for me to check out. If you want a copy yourself, like I said, all the links are down below. Have you seen this movie? Have you heard of this movie? It feels like it's not getting as much exposure as it should right now, and I feel like it deserves some credit here. Let me know what you think about everything down below. Obviously, we'll be back for more. I have a haul video that I'm going to be doing and a couple of new films that are going to be coming out here soon, so keep your eyes peeled. I've got like a horror film, I got some samurai films, there's a lot. But yeah, thanks for coming by, guys, and as always, long live the boys.